Not mine. Not anyone I knew. It was sharp, musky, the kind of scent that lingers in the air even when the person is long gone. And in that instant, I knew something was wrong. My house, my safe little place, didn't feel like mine anymore. I froze on the threshold, still holding my purse, listening. There was laughter from down the hall, a man's voice, then a woman's. Someone was in my home. For a second, I thought maybe I was losing it. Maybe I'd left the TV on? But no, I'd unplugged it that morning before work, like I always did. My hand was trembling when I reached for my phone. I remember the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. That's when I saw my spare key, the one I'd given to my neighbor Martha, sitting on the hallway table. Not hidden. Not in my drawer. Just sitting there. That's when the pieces began to fall into place. Before everything went wrong, life was simple. Ordinary even. I lived in a quiet cul-de-sac in a small town where neighbors still waved at each other, where people borrowed sugar and returned it with a slice of cake. I'd been there nearly 8 years, long enough to plant my roots, to paint the walls, to make the little 2-bedroom cottage my own. I worked long shifts at the local clinic, 10 hours most days. Nursing isn't just a job, it's a rhythm of exhaustion and purpose that swallows whole weeks. I'd come home too tired to cook, just heating leftovers and sitting by the window with a cup of tea. That window faced Martha's house. She moved in 2 years ago, mid-50s, chatty, warm in that motherly way that made you feel like you'd known her forever. She'd bring over banana bread, gossip about the neighborhood, and sometimes help water my plants when I was working weekends. I didn't have family nearby. My son was in the army. My daughter was studying abroad. So Martha's friendliness was comforting. It filled the quiet spaces. When I got a promotion last spring, more hours, more stress, Martha offered to keep an extra key. You never know, she said, smiling as she stirred sugar into her tea. In case you lock yourself out. Or need someone to feed the cat. It seemed harmless. Trustworthy. And I did lock myself out once before. I laughed and handed her the key. That was the first mistake. For months, everything seemed fine. She'd text me updates if a package came, wave from her porch when I left for work, and even pull in my trash bins if I forgot. I thought, how lucky am I to have a neighbor like her? We fell into a rhythm. Sunday morning coffee on her porch, trading recipes, small talk about the weather. She told me she'd been lonely since her husband passed. I understood that kind of loneliness. Maybe that's why I trusted her so easily, because I saw something in her that looked a little like me. But around midsummer, small things began to shift. Once, I came home and found my back door unlocked. I brushed it off, told myself I must have been careless. Then a towel was moved, a spoon left in the sink. Little things that made me pause. When I mentioned it to Martha, she gasped. Oh honey, maybe someone tried to break in. You should change the locks. She said it with such concern that I felt foolish even doubting her. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that my home had been entered. Not violently, not with force, but entered. It was a Friday evening when I noticed the mail. A thick stack had been stuffed into my box, but half of it wasn't mine. There were envelopes with unfamiliar names addressed to my address. I flipped through them. A cell phone bill for a Jason L. Ford. A package slip for Angela Ford. My stomach twisted. That night, I knocked on Martha's door. She opened it quickly, still wearing her pink housecoat, hair pinned up. Oh sweetheart, you startled me. What's wrong? I showed her the mail. These aren't mine. They're using my address. She frowned, squinting. Oh dear, that's strange. Maybe a mix-up from the postal office. I wanted to believe that. But something in her tone, that too casual shrug, didn't sit right. The next morning, I went to the post office. The clerk checked the system. He said, tapping the screen. Looks like that name was recently added as a shared resident for your address. I stared at him, not understanding. You mean someone listed themselves as living at my house? He nodded. Happens sometimes. People use an address to look more stable. Credit cards, rentals, that kind of thing. I walked out of there cold, holding that bundle of letters like evidence. That was when I called Martha again. She didn't answer. That week, strange noises came from my house when I got home late. A TV turned off just as I opened the door. A curtain swayed in a room I hadn't been in. I told myself it was stress, that maybe I was working too much. But one night, I came home earlier than usual. There were voices, low, muffled. A man laughing. The faint clink of a glass. I stood outside my own front door, frozen. I should have called the police right then. But I didn't. Because in my mind, it had to be a mistake. Maybe Martha's family? Maybe she'd had an emergency and used the key? So I turned the handle, quietly. The smell hit me first. Then the laughter. And there, through the narrow opening of my hallway, I saw them. Two strangers sitting on my couch, eating from my plates. A suitcase open on the floor. My blanket, the one my daughter crocheted me, draped over their legs. I whispered, "Excuse me?" They both looked up, startled, as if I was the intruder. Can we help you?" the man said. For a long moment, I couldn't even form words. My throat went dry. This is my house." The woman blinked. "Oh, Martha said we could stay here for a while. She's your cousin, right?" My knees nearly gave out. I didn't even notice the tears until I felt one hit my hand. I backed out, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I called the police from the driveway, my voice shaking so bad they had to ask me twice for the address. When the officers arrived, the couple tried to explain that Martha had told them I was renting out the spare room, that she was helping a friend find a place to stay. They even showed a fake agreement she'd printed, with my address and her signature forged next to my name. I stood there under the yellow porch light, trembling, watching strangers being escorted out of my home. Martha's porch light was off, but I could see the faint flicker of her TV through the curtains. She knew. I didn't see Martha again for 3 days after that night. The police had told me not to confront her, to let the investigation take its course. But it's hard to sit in silence when the person who betrayed you lives just 15 steps away. Every morning, when I left for work, I'd glance at her porch, at the flowers she'd always tended so carefully. They were wilting now. Maybe she was hiding. Maybe she was scared. But I was angry. Angry in a quiet, bone-deep way that doesn't shout or break things. It just sits inside you like a stone. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Every creak of the floorboards made me tense. I changed the locks, cleaned every surface, and threw out every towel, pillow, and plate those strangers might have touched. But I still felt invaded. Then came the letter. It was slipped under my door on a Thursday evening. No envelope, just folded paper. In Martha's handwriting. "I never meant to hurt you. I only wanted to help someone who had nowhere to go. They told me they'd be respectful. I thought you'd understand. Please forgive me." Forgive her? She'd let people move into my house, lie in my bed, use my address. She'd turned my trust into her tool. Still, I couldn't tear up the note. I just folded it back and set it on the counter. Because a part of me knew. Even betrayal often comes from broken people trying to fill their own emptiness. The next morning, I saw her on her porch. She looked older, smaller somehow, shoulders hunched, eyes red. She must have seen me too, because she called out softly, "Please, can we talk?" He walked over slowly. The air between us felt heavy. "Martha," I said, my voice steady. "Why would you do this to me?" She pressed her hands together like she was praying. I didn't think it would get so out of hand. "Jason and Angela, they're my cousin's kids. They lost their apartment. I thought they'd only stay a few nights. I didn't want to bother you." "Bother me?" I repeated. "Martha, you gave strangers my key. You told them they could live in my house. You forged my name." She started crying, whispering, "I was just trying to help." I let her speak. I let the silence stretch between us until even the birds seemed to pause. Then I said quietly, "Helping someone never gives you the right to betray someone else." Her tears fell harder. But I couldn't comfort her. Not this time. That evening, I filed the full report. The forged rental agreement was enough evidence for the police to proceed. She didn't go to jail. She was given probation, a fine, and a restraining order. When the officer asked if I wanted to attend the court hearing, I said no. I didn't need to watch her be punished. I just needed my peace back. Word spread fast in our little neighborhood. At first, people were shocked. Then came the gossip. Whispers on porches, sympathetic glances at me, awkward silence when Martha's name came up. Some neighbors said she'd always been a bit too friendly. Others admitted they'd trusted her, too. A few weeks later, she moved out quietly. Her house went up for sale, the garden overgrown, the mailbox empty. I watched the sold sign go up one morning on my way to work. I stood at my window that night and looked across at the dark, empty porch. For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders relax. Justice had come, quietly, without drama, without shouting. And yet, I didn't feel victorious. I felt sad. Now every time I lock my door at night, I feel something I didn't before. Not fear, but gratitude. Because I got my home back. And more importantly, I got myself back. You know, sometimes betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the people who smile at you every morning. The ones you let close because you see goodness in them. But goodness without boundaries can destroy you. And trust, once broken, teaches you the hardest lesson of all. Never confuse kindness with permission. So tell me, if you were in my place, would you have forgiven her? Would you have let her explain, or closed that door for good? Let me know in the comments. And if my story reminded you of your own, of a time someone crossed a line you never thought they would, remember this: you have the right to take your peace back. Thank you for listening. And if you believe in second chances, but never at the cost of your safety, subscribe, and stay with me for more stories like this. Because sometimes healing begins the moment you lock the door. And keep the key for yourself.